All right, I have such a gift for you today. I was just sharing with our guest, Kelly Roach is on the podcast today. I was sharing with her that I've been on her email list for years. I have been following along. I've done some of her challenges, her different workshops and things that she's done. And so when I got the opportunity to have her on this show, I not only am I feeling so blessed, but I'm so excited to be able to share her with you. So if you don't know Kelly, first of all, where have you been? I don't know, but just a little bit about her. She is one of the only female founders in the online space to build her company from 0 to 8 figures. And that sounds really great, but here's the next part: with no debt, no investors, no outside funding. On a personal level, Kelly's a former NFL cheerleader, Fortune 500 executive turned to 8 figure entrepreneur. She is a no nonsense mentor coach who just really wants to help people find freedom through entrepreneurship. She's a best-selling author. She has a podcast. She's a philanthropist and has so much that you can just dive into about her. But without further ado, Kelly, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, well, like I said, I have been learning from you for quite some time. I became an entrepreneur 10 years ago, and you just kind of get your feet wet, and then you watch those people who are, some people just a few steps ahead of you, some people 10 steps ahead of you. And I just want to thank you for inspiring me and so many people. And I'm so excited to have our topic today, which I think is really important because we all hear the verse, "You were made for such a time as this." And that sounds so great, right? We're like, yes, we want to be Esther's. And what does that actually mean? So we're going to talk today about stepping into your Kairos moment. But before we jump into that, it's so great to share all the cool things, the NFL, the Fortune 500. You've created multiple $1 million businesses. If we were friends having coffee, what would be just a few things that I might know about you that can kind of bring you down to like a normal person's level?
Yes. Well, I mean, I think the greatest accomplishment of my life is my marriage to my husband. We've been together for 18 years, and the way that we've been able to raise my daughter, Madison. So, far more identity in that than in anything that happens outside of my home. So you would probably know that about me. I'm trying to learn guitar, and I'm really bad at it. You might also know that. Um, and I'm a little bit of a bookworm. I speak for a living. I teach on camera all day, every day. But if you see me out at a party or you're, in my personal life, I like to listen a lot more than I like to talk. So I use my gift how I was called, but I'm a little bit more reserved when you meet me in person.
I love that. Well, thank you for sharing. So let's talk about this Kairos moment and like stepping into that. So for somebody who might not even know what that means, I think that, I mean, it's a Greek word, right? But some people might know, sometimes people might associate that with the biblical, the Kairos, but can you share a little bit more? Like, what does that mean?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I did pick the word because of its biblical meaning and because of its association with God. And I have a long story about why I ended up for a time like this, and I'll talk about that in just a second. But there are many definitions of Kairos, but the way that I describe it to people in the context of how I teach on Kairos is, a Kairos moment is where you open your heart and open your mind to invite God into your life in such a powerful and meaningful way that your life is left forever changed. And when you think about Chronos versus Kairos, Kairos is God's time, right? And, when you look at the definition of Kairos, it many times talks about a crucial action at a critical moment,
Mm-hmm.
right? And this started coming up for me because obviously I'm privy to many thousands and thousands of entrepreneurs of all walks of life and all levels of success from startup to 8 and 9 figures. And I had conversation after conversation after conversation with entrepreneurs that felt disconnected, burnt out, frustrated, overwhelmed, no longer fulfilled or satisfied in the business that they were building. And I think that after the whole COVID situation and all of those things that took place, I think a lot of people went through personal transformation on some level. It's different for everyone that you talk to, but almost everyone that you talk to went through some type of life-changing transition, transformation, or change of some kind. And I really started thinking about my own career, my own life, and asking myself, if I were to really look at how I've been of service to the world, which my first 10 years in business for myself, I focused really exclusively on business strategy. I'm fascinated and obsessed with the idea of helping people to build successful businesses. And I always kept my faith very quiet, very separate to the side. I never spoke publicly about my faith. I never spoke publicly about God. And I started realizing as I was hearing from all of these business owners about the struggle that they were going through and how they were feeling. And so, obviously you can see if you look at a graph of business closures, they're the highest in 10 years, right? And so I started really thinking about this and I was like, I think that our culture, there's definitely like a spiritual war that's happening where culture really wants to remove God from the conversation. And a lot of us have gone along with it. And, I was one of them. I kept my faith very private. I was like, that's my private life. This is what I teach. This is my private life. This is personal. And I said, you know what? It's time to really put a stake in the ground and give people the power back in their hands to understand you don't have to carry this burden alone. God always has a bigger and better and more magnificent plan for your life than you could ever come up with. And that when you welcome God, not just into your life, but into your business, that whatever is for you, you don't have to know how on your own. You don't have to be everything on your own. You don't have to do it alone. When you're answering that calling, you cannot not have that fire in your heart and in your soul of what you're doing, even when you're going through terribly hard things. And I just realized that so many people, the secular world has removed God so much that so many business owners don't have a faith life anymore. And I said, I think I have a responsibility, given the position that I play in the market and the reach that I have and the audience that I have, to put a stake in the ground and say, hey, I didn't do this on my own. I couldn't have done this on my own. Like, I wouldn't be here without my faith. And this is how I got through it. And this is how you can too. And so it was just kind of like a sharp right turn for me of me accepting my Kairos moment when I asked myself and asked God, like, what are you calling me to do next? Where are you calling me? And it was like, you need to lead with faith. You need to make sure that anyone who interacts with you and your brand knows, like, this is the way, this is the truth, this is life. And business too, that's great. Have money, make a difference. There's nothing wrong with that. But so it was both of those things. And I think that we just, as believers, can't stand for culture stamping that out anymore, because I really do believe it's why there's such a severe mental health crisis. I think it's why so many business owners are going out of business. I think it's why people in general are very hopeless and feel helpless in their lives, because they're not connected to the heart and soul of their creator and the joy and the peace and the happiness that we can't get from the outside world. We can only get from there. Yeah.
I love that so much. And if I can just share with you, so I talk a lot about that and how, if I'm a believer, am I supposed to talk about God? And I do think there's covert businesses, which I think that's really what you've been running under. But if I can just share with you from my personal perspective,
Yeah.
I've always known that there was something there. Like, because when I'm looking for a mentor,
Yeah.
that's important to me, because that's true north always, over
Yeah.
strategy, over
Yeah.
whatever. And so if I just can just honor you in that
Thank
even
you.
though maybe you weren't public about it, I always
Yeah.
knew how you held yourself, how you carried yourself, your language, just some things that you shared. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure. So it's so fun to see you come out
Yeah.
and be more overt and really
Yeah.
share that with people. Truth is truth, right? And
Yeah.
so I don't think we always have to put a Bible verse to it to
Yeah.
necessarily like tell people I'm a believer.
Yeah.
But I love that the Lord has shown you the stages that you have, the influence that you have, and that you answer to that. Because I can only imagine, with the platforms that you have built, that there maybe were some questions of, what is this going to do if I do
Yeah.
start sharing that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. That was a huge question. And I think, like, we grew up in a time where it's like, don't discuss religion, politics, or money at the dinner table. Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
And so I think there's just like a built in, but it's really interesting because I think that I've seen something amazing. And to your point, thank you for saying that, that like you could tell there was something there because I've
Jesus
always,
was shining, even though you
yeah, I mean,
were
I
saying,
try,
yeah.
I've always lived my faith in how I treat people and tried to, obviously. But yeah, but anyway, to that point, like I think that, in the last year, year and a half, it's been really interesting because I have seen so many more believers coming and speaking about it and being forthcoming about it because I think that there is such warfare against people connecting, with their higher power. And I think that's a really, really wonderful thing. And I think that's going to continue to grow. But I did have a lot of fear around it for sure. But I just was at the point where I had just said, the answer is yes, God. So whatever it is, the answer is yes.
So good. I love that. So as we like are journeying on, obviously everything we're just always growing. And I love this idea of like this reinventing ourselves. Once we
Yeah.
invite God in and we really allow him to be that, what does that look like to present yourself in a way that honors who God created you to be, but also that's like in alignment with the assignment that you have and the
Yeah.
business? So if you could maybe talk about some practical ways that
Yeah.
one can do
Yeah,
that.
I mean, and this is the thing. I'm never here to prescribe to anyone how they should live their faith or share their faith or anything like that. I think that's such a deep personal journey. I know it was for me. But I have had a lot of people ask me that question. And actually, it's funny. A lot of people join Kairos that already have really successful businesses and they say, I don't know how to share my faith. I don't know what to do. And they're actually joining Kairos because they're like, I need to see an example. Like, I want to share, but obviously you don't want to do it in a way where you're, projector or whatever, like, there's positives and negatives and all of that. But
Sure.
I mean, for me, like, I'll give an example. This week, I took over a new direct report. I promoted someone new in one of my companies, and I had my first one-on-one with her this week. And I said, and I knew she was a person of prayer also. And I said, hey, how do you feel if, every week when we start our one-on-ones, if we just start in prayer together? And I thought she was going to cry. She was like, yes, And so there's so many little things. I think, there's little ways that you can signal that you're connected to something deeper and something bigger than you in everything that you do, whether it's you're speaking on stage or whether you're hosting a Zoom call or I know for me one of the things that I had to put on my Kairos page, because I've taught in the secular world for a really long time, it literally says like, Kelly is a Christian, she will be using Bible verses, we will be talking about Christian practices. If that's not a fit, like, that's okay, right? But I had to do that because my audience is everyone. And I said, all are welcome. It doesn't matter what your faith is or what walk of life you're in, but in this world, this is the conversation that we're having. Everyone's invited, but just know that that's what you're coming into. So I think everybody has to find their own little touch points. I started this past year, like, even with my team, when we're starting an event, like, I'll just like say, hey, can we just like pray together for a minute? And just like little things that let people know that, like, there's something higher that your identity is attached to. And I think, like, to your point earlier, I think people can feel that and can tell when your identity is like in this world, right? Versus when your identity is like a higher power.
Yeah, absolutely. That's been a huge part of my journey, is realizing that my success was tied to my identity, even though I was a believer and I was very outspoken about that and I've shared. But the Lord has just healed so much in me and the
Yeah.
drivenness that I had to show me why I was so driven and what was perhaps I was seeking in
Yeah.
success and not seeking in him, which has
Oh,
been
for sure.
such a journey. So I would love to think about, because the women that I work with are very driven. They're very ambitious. They have these, or I will always say, like, these God-sized dreams, but they often wonder if they're too big. You have
Yeah.
accomplished so much. What
Yeah.
would you say to that woman?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think part of identifying, like, with the identity that you have in Christ, right? And part of releasing the identity of ego and releasing identity of the world is realizing that whatever dream you have for yourself, God's dream for you was 1,000x that. right? And that doesn't, when I say 1000x, that doesn't mean that that is always quantifiable in dollars and cents or the size of your business, right? I look at my husband. My husband has been a stay-at-home dad with Madison since birth. That was a choice that we made. We didn't want our daughter in daycare. That was really, really important to us. And when I look at him, I don't think he could have ever imagined the kind of father that he became and the bond that he would have with Madison. And so, like, God's vision for the father that he could become was 1,000 times greater. He knew he would be a good dad. I knew he would be a good dad. I wouldn't have married him. Like, of course, like, you know, like the boxes were checked. But when I look at the relationship that they have and the bond that has formed and how much fun they have together and how Madison has grown and developed and the pride that he has in seeing his life's work, which he has spent 10 years cultivating our daughter. So when I say God's dream for you is always 1,000 times bigger than anything you could come up with, that's in every form and facet. It could be in your business. For me, I think one of the biggest things, I look at the way that God created me, and I think this is really important to reflect on a lot. Like, God created me in a way that I don't really care so much about a lot of the things that other people in my space don't care about. I'm not motivated by physical things. I'm not motivated by cars or houses or, you know, flying private. Like, none of those things excite or motivate me. But what does excite and motivate me is transforming families and changing their family history by helping people build successful businesses. And I look at every goal that I set in my business and I say, when I do this, how many other thousands of people are going to say, oh, Kelly did that, I can do that too? And I'll give a specific example. When I hit 7 figures in the business, I immediately put a stake in the ground and I told my team and I told my clients and I told the market, okay, you know, we're a 7 figure business. We're going for 8. We're going to make it happen. And we did that. And we did that in like less than 2 years. And I will tell you, I had never had a client that I had helped hit 8 figures before. Within 1 year, like the same calendar year of us hitting 8 figures, 2 of my clients hit 8 figures. Now, why did that happen? Yes, are we great strategists? Are we good at what we do? Yeah, sure, whatever. They saw someone do it and they believed it. It's just like the 4-minute mile. So I think dumbing down your goals and like playing small because you think God might be mad at you that you had too big of a dream is crazy. And in fact, especially if you're a service provider, especially if you're a leader, especially if you're a business owner, everything that you do is a gift to everyone coming behind you to instill in them the belief that it can be for them. And I see us in the middle of a cornfield with a tractor plowing through and creating a pathway for everyone that follows us. So I don't think there could be a moment in which God would look at us through the lens of you're trying too hard or you're, you know, wanting too big. But I think, you know, obviously there's the very important kind of line that I think a lot of people cross, which is knowing what the enough point is in terms of how much you're pushing and how hard you're pushing. And, you know, I think that one of the reasons I've started talking a lot publicly about the preservation of family, about marriage, about the importance of focusing on our children is one of the hardest things that I have watched over, you know, a decade plus in this space is mental illness, so much divorce, so many people that push themselves in the business to the point of a complete health breakdown. And I could go on and on and on and on. And that is not what God would have for us, right? But that's when we get swept up in this not enoughness, not enoughness, not enoughness. And we push ourselves to the point of everything that we said we were doing it for our families, right? We're working 80 hours a week for our families. And yet, like if I said, Madison, would you like me to give you a bank account with $1 million or would you like me to sit and give you my full attention and play Monopoly? She's going to pick me sitting and playing Monopoly with her. It's time with the people that we love. And I love making money. I make a lot of money. So I'm not here to say like, you know, I love making money. I love being a millionaire. But you have to know the enough point where you're crossing over the line. And now you're actually doing a disservice to your calling, to what God would have for you, to what the people and the things that you said that you were pursuing success for, how those things are going to be impacted by what you're doing and the way that you're doing it, right?
Yes. I always say God did not give you your business to stress you out.
Yeah,
And if you are stressed out, something's off, something needs recalibrated, something needs
yeah,
realigned, something. And I think, being in a social media driven world where we get to see the people who are a few steps ahead of us and we
yeah.
want that enoughness is so good to identify like what is success for you, and you get to define that with God and what is enough for you. And I do think God's a God of multiplication, glory
Yeah,
to glory. And when we
yeah,
get outside of his timing, I would say, pay
yeah,
attention to your feelings. Your feelings are like the flashlights they're going to tell you. If you're
yeah.
stressed and you're overwhelmed, and all those words that you use that some of these business owners that you've worked with, I mean, that's your sign. That's your sign. I love what you said about it. Just made me think of like our business is a lot less about us. If we
Oh
actually
yeah.
pause and stop, like you said, that ripple effect of if I do this, then who is this going to impact? And if we can just embrace that and stop making it so much about us and making it
Oh
more
yeah.
the
I mean,
people.
honestly, yeah. I mean, and to that point, like from my perspective, I probably would have quit a long time ago. I'll tell a story actually. There was probably a time like 5 or 6 years ago, where I was just like not in a good place. Like we all have that, right? And I was at a place where I was just not in a good place. I think I was just really frustrated, and I was just like, you know what? I had this really high level mastermind. I still have it today. It's like 9 years old now. And I was like, I'm just gonna run this little mastermind and like make $1 million a year and like be done. I'm like, I don't want to do any of this. Like, I don't want to do it anymore. Like, I just don't want to do it. And that's where I was, and I prayed about it, and I came out of that prayer, and I was like, wow, that would be the most selfish thing they could ever possibly do,
Hmm.
because there's so many people that the work that we do every single day, whether it's a podcast, a video on social media, a post, an email newsletter, the bigger programs that we run, like whatever it is, like it's not about you. It's about why were you chosen in this moment, in this world, at this time? What was the work that you were chosen to do? I was chosen to do this work. It's fulfilling the vocation and purpose of my life. It's not about how do I just like, is it easier or, less stressful or this or that or the other, right? It's about fulfilling the potentiality of the gifts that you are given. Right. And I love that quote, and I forget who said it, but it's like one of my favorite quotes. And he says that your talent is God's gift to you. And what you do with that talent is your gift back to God.
Mhm.
And that's like the story of the arc of our entire life. The arc of our entire life is, were you able to recognize the gifts that you were given from God? Do you truly understand the magnificence and the power of the gifts that you are given for free? Like you woke up and you have this capability to do this thing that comes naturally and that you do exceptionally well, that other people would fight their entire life to be able to do how you do it. Number one, so can you recognize those gifts? And then number two, are you actually spending your life in pursuit of sharing and giving those gifts away and multiplying them and duplicating them and blessing as many people as possible with them? Right. And I think the less that it's about us and the more that it's about aligning with the vocation that we were gifted with. And I do think that that can change over time also. I think that it's a lot easier to keep going when it's not just all about me and how do I feel today, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
so good. So good. So you mentioned family, and I want to ask this last thing. You mentioned family and you mentioned your daughter, and our listeners they're all moms. They're, for
Yeah.
the most part, they're moms. They have families. They have they wear many hats, right?
Yeah.
What advice do you have for her? The one who has the big God-sized dreams, who gets, all of that, but there's that, and I hate the word balance. I don't believe in it. I think there's more
Yeah.
harmony and we kind of ebb and flow in the seasons. But what piece of advice, having already been there, making mistakes and doing all the things, like what
Yeah.
piece of advice would you give to her?
Well, the number one thing that I tell my clients all the time is you'll never regret that your business grew a little bit slower because you took time for your spouse or your children.
So good.
Like, period. Like, there's no needed further discussion. And so whenever people ask me something and they come to me and they're super stressed, like, I have this going on, I have this going on, I have this, I have this, but I have this, I'm like, no. Like, faith and family, everything else. That doesn't mean that you don't have to show up and work. Doesn't mean you don't have to make it work. Doesn't mean you have to, you need to know what your values are. You need to know what your non-negotiables are. So, like, my non-negotiables since Madison's birth: always at our school for anything that's going on at school, always present for play dates, always the one inviting kids over our house and being available when they're here to, have oversight, praying with my daughter every day, right? I have a list of my non-negotiables. I live and die by that. Everything else, you can ebb and flow, right? You can be flexible with. So figure out what your non-negotiable list is and then build your business around that. The other thing I will say that I did that I really look back on my life and I'm super happy about, and I think that it impacted Madison a lot, was, from the time that Madison was born until when she went to school, and now we're homeschooling next year, my husband and I together.
We are too.
Oh, you are? Oh, that's
Yes.
so awesome. Yeah, we were like on the fence about it for a long time, but it was just like really on my heart so much. And I just feel like, why would I want to outsource that? Like,
Yes, I said, I told someone, and this was kind of when you're just talking and then you have the revelation, it's like, oh
yeah,
wait, I said, why do the teachers get the best of my kids? They
yeah,
get those moments that their little light bulbs go off and that
yeah,
like they get excited, whether it's they learned something, they finally got it, or just they're having a good time. And I thought that was the phrase that I said to somebody. And I thought,
yeah,
oh my goodness, like you said, why am I outsourcing?
yeah.
So, oh, that could be a whole other conversation, but
Yeah,
that's,
it's a whole nother conversation, but
yeah, so
I
you'll
mean,
be
that's it, right? And,
homeschooling.
and so what I would say is, like, I think a lot of moms still have like the old school corporate mentality of like, I need to be so professional and blah, blah, blah. I've been bringing Madison on live streams with me like since birth. Like, I still have people come to me today from Madison's 10. So we're talking about 8 and 9 years ago, and I still have people to this day that will write me emails and they will write me messages on social media and say, you gave me the courage as a mom to build my business my way and to like allow my kids to be a part of the process instead of trying to have these things be like opposite ends of the world. And that's why I think so many moms, it just, the pressure is too great to be perfect. And then when you put that level of pressure, it's like not sustainable. I have Madison speak at my events. I have her come on live streams with me. She'll do more with me next year, obviously, now that she's going to be home. But I think like just including your kids, even if they're sitting and coloring in the office, you don't realize like how much they're absorbing subconsciously by hearing you teach, hearing you talk. So I think just like relaxing a little bit and like asking yourself, like, how could they grow and how could I grow by allowing them to also be a part of what I'm doing in some way, shape, or form?
So good. Kelly, I loved this conversation. Again, social media and the platforms that we have, it kind of gives
Yeah.
this persona, but I just loved getting to hear more of the heart of
Mm,
you.
thank you.
And I will link all of your things below because there's a lot of ways we can connect with you. What are the
Yeah.
best ways that you would want to have someone connect with you?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I would say the Kelly Roach show is number one because I'm live there twice a week and I'm always releasing episodes and they're like 20 minutes. So it's easy to just like come in, download something meaningful, and then apply it in your business or life. DM me on Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever. Just say, hey, I heard you on the show. And I'll give you a link to the reinvention playbook. So anybody that's listening that kind of feels like things are not fully in alignment or you're not seeing the traction that you want in your business and you think that maybe there's like something else there, go through the playbook and you'll get some really powerful answers that will help you get back on track.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And I
Yeah,
can't wait to hear the feedback from this episode. I am looking forward to what is next for you and just
thank
following along
you.
and learning from you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to the Seek First CEO podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, can you do a sister a solid? Subscribe to the show so that you never miss an episode and leave a review so that other Kingdom entrepreneurs can find the soul-changing content that we share here. Thank you for being part of this community and for tuning in each week.